The wounded healer, the sterile white corridors of Aurora 7, hummed with the constant drone of life support systems. Dr. Elena Vasquez moved through the medical bay like a ghost, her hands steady as she sutured another miner's wounds, but her eyes remained hollow. The space station orbited the resource-rich planet of Kepler-4 for 2b. Serving as a medical hub for the dangerous mining operations below, Elena's dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, revealing the exhaustion etched in her features. 3 months had passed since the mining accident that claimed her husband Marcus, yet the pain felt as fresh as an open wound. She worked 18-hour shifts now, losing herself in the rhythm of healing others, while her own heart remained broken. Her 16-year-old daughter Zoe watched from the observation deck, pressing her palm against the reinforced glass. The girl had inherited her father's bright green eyes and her mother's stubborn determination. But lately, she felt helpless watching her mother fade away. Zoe remembered when Elena would hum while cooking dinner, when laughter filled their quarters. When her mother's touch carried warmth instead of clinical detachment, the medical bay doors hissed open, and Captain Darius Kane strode in, carrying an unconscious miner. His broad shoulders strained against his rescue pilot uniform, and his weathered hands showed the calluses of a man who lived by action rather than words. Darius had steel-gray eyes that seemed to see too much, and a scar running from his left temple to his jaw, a memento from his own brush with death. "Cabin on level 7, Darius announced, his voice rough from breathing recycled air during the rescue. 3 injured. This one's the worst." Elena moved with practiced efficiency, her fingers dancing across the diagnostic equipment. She didn't look at Darius directly, but she was aware of his presence in a way that disturbed her carefully constructed emotional barriers. He always stayed longer than necessary, helping to move patients, asking about their conditions with genuine concern. As Elena worked to stabilize the miner, Darius noticed the tremor in her hands when she thought no one was looking. He had lost. People too understood the weight of survivor's guilt that pressed down on a person's shoulders like crushing gravity. There was something about Elena's quiet strength that drew him, a recognition of kindred spirits shaped by loss. "The coffee's terrible in the cantina today," Darius said softly, attempting conversation as Elena cleaned the miner's wounds. "Tastes like recycled engine coolant." Elena's lips almost curved into a smile, but she caught herself. "The coffee's always terrible here, Captain. You should know that by now." "Maybe you could show me where the good stuff is hidden," he suggested, his tone carefully casual. "I hear doctors have their own private stash." For a moment, Elena's professional mask slipped, and Darius glimpsed the woman beneath the grief. But just as quickly, the walls went back up. "I need to focus on my patient," Elena replied, her voice returning to its clinical coolness. From the observation deck, Zoe watched the exchange with growing interest. She had noticed how Captain Kane looked at her mother, how he always found reasons to linger in the medical bay. More importantly, she had seen the brief spark in her mother's eyes when he spoke to her, breaking through the walls over the following weeks. Darius made it his mission to chip away at Elena's defenses. He brought her real coffee beans from his personal supply, claiming he had too many. He shared stories about his rescue missions, carefully avoiding the tragic details that might trigger her trauma. Most importantly, he listened when she did speak, giving her his full attention in a way that made her feel seen again. Elena found herself looking forward to his visits. Despite her attempts to remain distant, there was something comforting about his steady presence, the way he filled the sterile medical bay with warmth just by being there. His laugh was rich and genuine. She caught herself wanting to hear it more often. Zoe had taken to timing her visits to the medical bay to coincide with Darius's appearances. She watched her mother's posture soften slightly when he was around, noticed how Elena's voice lost some of its brittle edge. The girl began to hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for her mother to find happiness again. Zoe said one evening as she and Elena shared a quiet dinner in their quarters, "Captain Kane asked about you today." Elena paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "He wanted to know if you liked music," Zoe continued, trying to sound casual. "I told him You used to love those old Earth jazz recordings Dad brought you. Alina set down her fork, her expression unreadable. Zoe, I hope you're not trying to matchmake. I'm just answering his questions, Zoe protested, but her eyes held a mischievous glint. He seems nice, Mom. And he makes you smile sometimes. That night, Alina lay in her empty bed, staring at the artificial stars projected on her ceiling. Marcus had installed the holographic display when they first arrived at Aurora 7, saying that Zoe needed to remember what real skies looked like. Now the stars felt like distant memories of a life that belonged to someone else. The next morning brought chaos. A massive explosion in the deep mines had trapped 12 workers, and Darius was leading the most dangerous rescue mission Aurora 7 had ever attempted. Lena waited in the medical bay with her team, supplies ready. But her hands shook as she watched the rescue feeds on the monitors. When the first shuttle returned, Darius wasn't on it. Elena's heart stopped as she realized he had stayed behind to help with the most critical extractions. Hours passed like years, until finally, his voice crackled over the communication system. Medical bay, this is Kane. Coming in hot with 3 critical patients, and I'm going to need some attention myself. Elena's professional training took over, but underneath something had shifted. The thought of losing Darius had awakened feelings she thought were buried forever. As his shuttle touched down and the bay doors opened, she saw him stumble as he carried the last victim to safety. His rescue suit was torn, and blood seeped through the fabric at his shoulder. Their eyes met across the medical bay, and for the first time in months, Elena felt truly afraid. Not the clinical concern of a doctor for her patient, but the deep, personal terror of someone who had something precious to lose again. Elena's hands moved with urgent precision as she cut away Darius's damaged suit. The injury was serious but not life-threatening. Shrapnel from the mine explosion had torn through muscle and embedded in his shoulder. Her professional mask held, firm but inside, her emotions churned like a solar storm. You're lucky, she murmured as she cleaned the wound, her fingers gentle despite her stern tone. A few centimeters lower and this would have hit an artery. Darius winced but managed. A weak smile. Luck's got nothing to do with it. I had something to come back to. Elena's breath caught, but she continued working, removing the metal fragments with steady hands. The other injured miners had been stabilized and moved to recovery, leaving them alone in the dim medical bay. Emergency lighting cast long shadows, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the clinical setting. As Elena sutured the wound, her hair fell forward, and Darius reached up with his good hand to tuck it behind her ear. The gentle touch sent electricity through her, and she looked up to meet his gaze. In his steel-gray eyes she saw not just attraction, but understanding, acceptance, and something deeper that made her pulse race. "Alina," he said softly, her name a whisper in the quiet room. Just then, the station's alert system activated. "Personnel, this is Commander Torres. We're tracking a Class 4 solar storm approaching our position. All non-essential personnel report to the shelters immediately. Medical staff remain on duty for emergency protocols." Alina stepped back, the spell broken by duty. "You need to get to the shelter. Solar radiation can interfere with the healing process." "What about you?" Darius asked, struggling to sit up on the medical table. "Someone needs to monitor the patients. The medical bay has better shielding anyway." Lena helped him to his feet, her hands lingering on his arm. "Go, I'll be fine." But Darius didn't move. "I'm not leaving you alone during a storm."
"Captain."
"Kane Darius," he corrected, his voice firm despite the pain medication. "And I'm staying. My shoulder's too damaged for me to be much use in the shelters anyway." As if to emphasize his point, the lights flickered and the station shuddered. Slightly as the first waves of the solar storm hit their shields, Elena realized that arguing would waste precious energy, and secretly, she was grateful not to face the storm alone. They settled into the small break room adjacent to the medical bay, sharing emergency rations and watching the storms progress on the environmental monitors. The solar wind painted brilliant auroras across the station's viewports, cosmic fire dancing against the darkness of space. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered, standing close to the reinforced window. Darius moved behind her, his presence warm and solid. Marcus would have loved this, he said quietly. Zoe told me he was a geology enthusiast. Alina tensed at the mention of her husband's name, but Darius continued gently. She also told me you blame yourself for his death. Alina turned, tears threatening to spill. I should have insisted he take the safer assignment. Should have made him listen. Alina, you can't control the universe, Darius said, his hand cupping her face. I've learned that the hard way. Can only control how we choose to live with the time we have. The storm intensified outside, and Alina felt something break inside her chest, like ice cracking in spring. She stepped closer to Darius, her hands reaching up to trace the scar on his face. I'm scared, she admitted, the words barely audible. So am I, he replied, leaning down until their foreheads touched. But maybe we can be scared together. When their lips met, it was soft at first, tentative, like two wounded souls, testing if they could still feel tenderness. But as the kiss deepened, Alina felt something she thought was gone forever, the warm flood of desire and connection that made her feel alive again. The weeks following the storm brought changes that even Zoe noticed immediately. Alina hummed again while working, her step lighter, her smiles genuine. She and Darius began spending their off hours together, sharing meals, walking the observation decks, and talking for hours about everything and nothing. Zoe watched her mother transform back into the woman she remembered, warm and vibrant and full of life. The girl felt a profound relief, as if a weight she'd been carrying had finally lifted. She made sure to give them space, understanding instinctively that her mother needed time to rediscover herself. Alina and Darius's relationship deepened beyond casual companionship. They shared quiet moments in Elena's quarters after Zoe had gone to bed, holding each other on the small couch while old jazz played softly in the background. Darius would trace patterns on Elena's arm while she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. One evening, as artificial night fell over the station, Alina led Darius to her quarters with a boldness that surprised them both. Zoe was staying overnight with friends, giving them precious privacy. The small living space felt intimate with its soft lighting and personal touches, pictures of Earth and family scattered on the walls. Are you sure? Darius asked, his hands gentle on her shoulders as she turned to face him. Alina answered by kissing him deeply, pouring all her newfound courage into the contact. Their clothes fell away slowly, reverently, as if they were unwrapping precious gifts. When they came together on Elena's narrow bed, it was with the passion of two people who had found each other against all odds. Darius worshipped Elena's body with patience and tenderness, understanding that she needed to feel cherished, not just desired. She responded with equal intensity, her hands mapping the scars and calluses that told the story of his dangerous life, accepting all of him without reservation. Afterwards, they lay entwined in the soft glow of the starlight projector, Elena's head on Darius's chest while his fingers combed through her dark hair. I never thought I could feel this way again, Alina whispered against his skin. Neither did I, Darius replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. You've given me something I didn't know I was missing. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the soft chime of Darius's communication device. Alina felt him tense as he read the message, and her heart sank before he even spoke. New assignment, he said quietly, his voice heavy with regret. Frontier Station, on the edge of the Vega system. They need experienced rescue pilots for the new mining operations. Alina sat up, the sheet clutched to her chest, her face pale. When? 2 weeks. The words hung between them like a death sentence. Alina felt the familiar clutch of panic, the certainty that everyone she loved would eventually be taken from her. She started to pull away, but Darius caught her hand. Alina, look at me, he said urgently. This doesn't have to be the end. Come with me. I can't just leave my position here, Alina protested, but her voice lacked conviction. You could request a transfer. Frontier stations always need medical personnel. Darius sat up, his eyes intense with hope and desperation. We could start fresh, all three of us. Zoe would love the adventure. Alina wanted to say yes, but fear held her back. The thought of leaving Aurora 7, of risking everything again. terrified her more than staying in her carefully constructed safe existence. The next morning, Alina told Zoe about Darius's transfer over breakfast. Her daughter's reaction surprised her, the girl's face falling with genuine disappointment. "He's leaving?" Zoe asked, her voice small. "But Mom, you're happy with him?" "Happier than you've been since Dad died." Lena reached across the table to take her daughter's hand. "Sweetie, it's complicated. We both have responsibilities here." "No, you have fears here," Zoe said, with the blunt honesty that only teenagers could manage. "Dad wouldn't want you to stop living because of what happened to him. We'd want you to be happy." That afternoon, Elena found herself in the commander's office, staring at a transfer request form on the desk. Commander Torres, a stern woman with kind eyes, waited patiently for Elena to speak. "The Frontier Medical Facility is state-of-the-art," Torres said finally, "and they're offering a significant promotion, head of medical services for the entire sector." "It's not about the job," Elena admitted. "I'm scared of losing someone else I care about." "Lena, you can't protect yourself from loss by refusing to live," Torres replied gently. "Marcus knew the risks when he took that mining assignment. He did it because he wanted to build a better future for you and Zoe. Don't let his sacrifice be for nothing." That evening, Elena walked the observation deck, where she and Darius often met. He was there waiting for her, his silhouette outlined against the stars. When he turned to face her, she saw her own uncertainty reflected in his eyes. "I've been thinking about what you said," Elena began, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "about starting fresh." Darius stepped closer, hope flickering across his features. "And I'm terrified," Elena admitted. "But I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life half alive, afraid to love again." She pulled out the signed transfer request, her hand trembling slightly. "I talked to Zoe. She's excited about the adventure. Says it's time we all had a new beginning." Darius gathered Elena in his arms, spinning her around as she laughed, the sound echoing through the observation deck. When he set her down, he kissed her with all the passion and promise of their shared future. 2 weeks later, the transport ship Meridian prepared for departure. Lena stood in the docking bay with Zoe and their packed belongings, watching as Darius completed his pre-flight checks. The girl bounced with excitement, already making plans for exploring their new home. As they boarded the ship, Elena took one last look at Aurora 7 through the viewports. The space station had been her refuge after tragedy, but it had also been her prison. Now she was choosing to step into an uncertain future with the man who had helped her remember how to live. Darius took her hand as the ship pulled away from the station, his grip strong and steady. Reviewed Fort Elena, could see distant stars, new worlds waiting to be explored, new chances for happiness stretching out before them like an infinite ocean of possibility. "Ready?" Darius asked, his voice soft with love and anticipation. Elena squeezed his hand, looking at Zoe's bright face and feeling her own heart fully open for the first time in almost a year. The woman who had been empty and broken was gone, replaced by someone brave enough to love again, to build again, to live again. "Ready?" she whispered, and meant it completely. As the Meridian jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward their new life among the frontier stars, Elena knew that healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about having the courage to embrace the future, scars and all. With an open heart and the people who made life worth living,